Airmen's Association. We're in our headquarters building on Lake Hood. It's, I don't know, Thursday, March 7th, and we're coming to you live. We're going to be talking about Merrill Field, past, present, and future. I'm John Dolan. I'm the Vice President of the Association. I'd like to take a minute to introduce our staff. We have Teresa Jensen, who is our Office and Finance Manager, and Victoria McCluskey, who's our Administrative Coordinator. And the two of them are holding down the fort on their own this week because the others are not here. So they're doing a great job. And update on the raffle tickets for those of you who are thinking about buying raffle tickets for the airplane. As of just a minute ago, there are less than half tickets left. There are 6,028 tickets left. So don't be bashful. We can sell you some tickets tonight before you leave if you like, or you can call in later and if you're watching from Facebook, give us a call at the Airmen's headquarters and order your tickets. That's enough about us. Gentleman I'm going to introduce to you here tonight came to us from the Director of Aviation at UAA's Aviation Technology Division. Prior to that, he was the Director of Aviation and Chief Flight Instructor for Eastern Kentucky University. He's got over 4,500 hours, including time in helicopter gunships, twin-engine observation aircraft, Beach King Air military aircraft. He's been a Part 135 charter captain flying King Airs, Bonanzas, and Barons. He has an MBA with an aviation emphasis in Embry-Riddle University and a PhD in biblical archaeology. And for the last 6 months, he's been the airport manager at Merrill Field. It's my pleasure to introduce Ralph Gibbs.
Thank you. Out in the car, I brought with me a flak jacket. The last several meetings I have been to, I needed the flak jacket. I decided I would come in, though, this evening and just see how the atmosphere was and make a quick dash to my car if I needed it. Again, I am Ralph Gibbs. I am the new guy. Thank you for having me here. It is my pleasure to share with you what we have going on at the airport. And as the slide says, I'm going to attempt to show you what's going on now, a little bit of the past, and for many of you who are lifelong Alaskans as compared to myself, an interloper who's only been here 3 years, talk about the past, present, and what we have in mind for the future. Let me figure out my technology.
Help is on the way.
There we go. Okay, so every presentation has to have an overview, so these are the things I hope to get covered tonight. By the way, how long do I have?
Till 7:30 if you want.
Okay, because this is my third presentation, I won't get through all the slides by 6:30. So we'll pick a nice spot to stop and jump to the questions that I know are most important.
There you go.
So for you biblical scholars, we're going to talk about in the beginning. Got to find a button to click. So a little bit about today. There we go. What our day-to-day operations are, which will be no surprise to most of you. Talk about our fiscal. Our chief fiscal officer is here from the municipality to make sure I don't say anything I'm not supposed to. No? Okay. Talk about our airport improvement programs. What we're doing as far as airport management. And we may not get this far, but a little bit about how we operate as an airport as a subset of the municipality. And then just Q&A. We are the second busiest airport in the state of Alaska. I'm sure that's not news to any of you. Second only to Ted Stevens. I'm giving a presentation to the 99s. For those of you who don't know, that's the lady naval aviators, no, it's a Freudian, not naval aviators, the female pilot organization. And I'm following the airport manager from Ted Stevens. So I'll let him prime the pump and then I'll come in and get them all fired up. We are an economic engine for Anchorage and Alaska. No surprise to you, I'm sure. My undergrad is sociology. So I worry about words and trying to figure out how to say that the road system in Alaska does not service the needs of Alaskans without offending anyone took me a couple of hours. So I settled on the word paucity. So based on the paucity of the Alaskan road systems, Lake Hood, Merrill Field, that's the only way folks can get to the interior, getting themselves, their stuff, etc. So that makes us extremely important. So in the beginning, 1930, 4,000 residents at this time. Moved from Delaney Park to the current location. Some of you may know where Delaney is. Yes?
Used to be the golf course before that.
Okay.
It actually was a dual land use. It was the airstrip and golf course.
So just remember I'm the interloper, so Delaney, okay. I accept that by faith that that's correct. 32 is renamed from Aviation Field, very unique, very original, to Merrill Field in memory of Russell Hyde Merrill. And as you probably know, he died in a crash in Cook Inlet in 29, and pioneered the first air routes from Kuskokwim. Did I get that right? Okay. Okay, so here comes what I think is the most interesting. I did not know this when I arrived 3 years ago, because I started off at the University of Alaska right in the middle of that red line. There's 15th. So it was a landfill, unsupervised until 52, and then controlled. I will tell you a little bit later, in some of our airport improvement programs, as you may know, we're doing dynamic compaction to squish down this garbage so that we can resurface it. One of our engineering firms underestimated the amount of trash out in here that needed to be hauled away so that we could do the dynamic compaction to the degree that the engineers required. Underestimated that, cost me $1.5 million. That engineer will not get a contract if I have anything to say about it in the future. Okay? I'm a voting member. And I had to make a deal with the folks with whom was taking our trash for us so that we could compact the rest of it. And we agreed to split the difference because it was actually a $3 million mistake. Okay, so the red line, that's where all of the trash is located. Right here at that elbow, do I have any Disney fans? I have 4 kids, so I have every Disney movie ever made. So Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is right there at that corner. When I got here 3 years ago, it was fairly even, and now it is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. The folks at the university have said, Ralph, what are you going to do about this problem right in the middle of our flight line? Well, all of our leaseholders are responsible for any of the upgrades, repairs, etc. to their leased property. I somehow don't think that's the university's fault. Right smack dab in the middle of their flight line, their pavement is buckling right along where that line is located. We're working on a $15 million project from special funding that comes without a requirement for any matching funds to make improvements to Merrill Field Drive. And so I'm hoping that if we get those funds, that we can wrap into that project that repair. Okay? Just kind of a small point there. I'm in a meeting with some folks. I'm the new guy, and this guy is an Air Force F-111 pilot. And he says, I understand your runway is 6,500 feet. And I think, no. I just built this slide. I'm sure it's only 4,000. The colonel says it's 6,500 feet. So I ran home to Google airnav.com to make sure that I was right, that it was 4,000 feet. So this is just some of the stats on the airport. So we're up to today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me. And if you need another cookie, if you need more food, I will not be offended if you get up to recharge your cups. Well, that was a Freudian slip. I'm sorry. First, so these are stats that go to the significance of Merrill Field. There's a registered pilot for every 58 residents, but 41% of the population is here in Anchorage. If I start going too fast, just slow me down. I just want to try to meet your timeline and get as many of these slides for you to consider. And again, the slideshow is available if you want to get a copy of it. So we're part of that paucity network. So we're a non-hub primary airport. No surprise to you folks. However, in my dreams and visions for the future, I would like to see us get our runway certified above 12.5, King Air B200 limitations, so that we could perhaps attract Raven Express to bring in their single engine turboprop 121 ops. I'm hoping. If you don't have a dream, then so I'd like to see us have 121 service. Emplanements, you may or may not know that we have to get 10,000 emplanements as opposed to touch and goes, as opposed to operations, in order for us to get our airport improvement funds. The part of this that is difficult from my perspective is that we have to take the word, we have to prompt our Part 135 users to give us those reports at the end of the year. How many emplanements did you have? If they don't report them, we don't get our airport improvement funds. We've been hovering around 18,000 or so emplanements, and you'll see some of our other stats, which are in the operations and touch and go category, which are significantly more. So when Anchorage International came online, then we became the general aviation reliever. So let's look at some of our statistics. Now, are you turning the camera just so you can see my face? I might have preferred just to be off camera. Okay, here's some stats. We're 86th out of 520 U.S. airports. And we had 151,400 annual operations. That includes touch and goes, that includes overflights, that includes instrument approaches to a low approach, but those are our stats. That's how we qualify to be number 2 in the state of Alaska. If you factor out and put us into just a GA category, then we're 46th. And if you're talking just touch and goes, which includes a touchdown, on the runway, or with skids or wheels, then we're 45th. Which is a representation of the fact that we have, I have a slide if we get to it, it's not including the university, 4 or 5 flight schools. July is our busiest month, no surprise. In July, then, we're 49th. 20th, if you just look at us in compared to other GA airports. 33rd for touch and goes. So here we are stacked up against all the other airports. So there's Ted Stevens, there's their 275K, there's our 151, and then the other airports like Fairbanks, Juneau, Bethel, Kenai, Kodiak, King Salmon, and we have approximately 20% of all flight ops within the state. Does that sound like I'm trying to market the airport, sing our praises?
As a quick note, you're singing them all the way from Australia. We have a viewer live from Australia.
Well, if you were in Japan, I could speak Japanese, but Australian is English, so welcome. I have a sheet coat that I picked up on a cruise into Perth, Australia, for an exercise back when I was a Marine and my hair was much shorter. In terms of aircraft based, we're number 1. I would like to point out of these 900 aircraft, if you've been to Merrill recently, several of them have no engines on them, but they count. They pay their monthly lease payments, tie-down payments, and so I don't fuss about the fact that they have no engines on them, other than they make us look, you know, what's going, it's like a boneyard at Davis Monthan, where they put all the aircraft out to pasture. There's what I have for Lake Hood, Fairbanks, Ted Stevens, and again, some stats. We have approximately 10% of all the aircraft in the state. So we're not under Part 139 rules, which are the certification and operation of land airports. We don't have the 121. I'm hoping that maybe I can add that. You're saying, well, where will they park? I don't know that yet. I gotta get the dream established first. I've heard rumors that Raven Express is looking at Palmer. If they're going to go to Palmer, why not come to Merrill Field? I just got to find a place for them. I do have a gentleman that would like to invest in a millionaire-like FBO. And I'm hoping that if I can convince him to do that, I have some space for him, that he will put in enough growth potential that we could add the scale so that we could service a 121 operation. As you know, if you've flown out of Ted Stevens, if you fly Raven, they don't have security. So it would be an easy transition for them to come out of Merrill, especially if they're going to Palmer. Now, I've been up to Palmer. When I was at the university, I was recruited by the Palmer airport manager. The city wanted to give the university a building to set up a satellite facility for aviation education. So they are motivated sellers, shall I say? But we don't have the security for a certificated airport, but in the case of this, I don't think it will matter. What about fiscal? So we've got some long-term ground leases. We have approximately 50 aviation businesses on the airport. If you were watching TV at 4:30 on Sunday afternoon Rhonda McBride showcased a company that is building a quad UAV to carry cargo. And they stopped off on their way to visit with me about establishing their manufacturing of those UAV birds at Merrill. I said, you had me at hello. And they're coming back in a week or so to take a look at some of the parcels that we have that I think might meet their needs. The company's called Saberwing. And I've forgotten exactly how much cargo it carries. Is it St. Paul? Is there an island? Okay. So one of the native corporations has contracted with them to build this machine, and they're going to test it up there, but they want to build it in Anchorage, and so I'd like to see them build it in Merrill. Okay. So we got 2.8 million square feet of leasable land. I talked about the university, I talked about all the leaseholders. They have the responsibility for the upgrade, the improvements, etc. Building space, 85,000. So currently, and this is the most contentious slide on, or bullet on all of my slides, currently our rates are 21 cents per square foot. So I've been in the job 6 months. I inherited a $200,000 per year loss over the last 4 or 5 years. That was masked by $4.5 million that the airfield got for the exchange of frontage property for the Glen Highway. So with that $4.5 million asset, it kind of hid the fact that we were losing $200K a year.
What's your income?
So I have slides if you want to see all of the revenue. I can show that to you, but the bottom line is that the net is $200K short. So we've been working with our advisory commission to come up with ways to increase the revenue. It has been proposed, subject to approval, that goes up by 6 cents per square foot. I want to emphasize proposed.
How much of the gap does that 6 cents close?
So that, excellent question, good segue. So in addition, I forgot to mention, in addition to the $200K that we've been short, the airport improvement, and I have some slides to show you exactly when it started to occur. The $4.5 million has been used to cover the shortage, and it's also been used to make the payments on the copay, if you will, the matching funds for airport improvement. That has ranged from the FAA gives us 95% of what it costs to make these improvements. We come up with 5%. The state was kicking in 2.5 of the 5. Then it switched to 92.75 that the FAA would cover, and we had to come up with the other 6.25. So those percentages on small dollars were small matching funds, and I'll show you where all those are. But when they started kicking in, $8 million projects, the matching funds were significant, and it consumed all of that asset. To your question, the matching funds for 2018, which have already been encumbered, is about $615,000. So if I'm in the hole, I have to fund that through a line of credit. To make that payment, I have to come up with additional dollars. The 2019 is another $600K for the matching funds. So I have a $1.2 million, as a comptroller, it was a mark. I have to find $1.2 million, financed over 10 years. The annual payment for that is $150K. So I'm looking to increase revenues by $350K per year, starting in 2020. And I've got some slides to show you exactly where that transition took place. Do I need to go get my flak jacket yet? Just want to make sure I'm ready. So we've got fuel vendors. The advisory committee, we were going to wait to increase the percentage that we get at the airport for fuel consumption or fuel that's sold. The advisory committee, oh no, let's go. So again, it's a proposal. You'll see that we get 8 cents per gallon on the fuel that's sold at the airport. I don't see this as a guaranteed revenue source because I have some very entrepreneurial pilots who have little gas cans and they go over to Safeway, and in the parking lot of Safeway they're having gas pumped into these cans and then they bring them back to the airport to fuel their aircraft. I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm just saying that it's happening. Okay? So this may be going up to perhaps 10 cents. Now we'll tell you, I'm an advocate for aviation. I tell City Hall every time I get the chance that just because you have an airplane, you personally do not have deep pockets. I tell the city every time I get the opportunity that if you're running a flight business, that your margins are really small, and if anything that is affecting your bottom line is going to affect whether or not you can stay in business. I understand that intuitively, and I am advocating for that position every time I get the opportunity to speak downtown. Here's what the avgas sales are. This does not reflect the Jet A, and we have a King Air or 2. We've got some jet helicopters. I think it's the Aerostar. And we just orchestrated a lease for D&D Air Park, and they're going to create a helicopter air park. And so I anticipate that the jet fuel sales is going to go up to support their aircraft. So of those 900, our leaseholders have 500 of them that they are leasing out to their various customers. The other 400 belong to my office. We're managing those as tight ends. This is what it is currently. $60 a month. For tail-end drive-through is $70. We're only charging $15 a month for electricity. If I was to put meters on all of those outlets, I'm not sure it would be that small. And so you can see it's just 60 plus 15 and 70 plus 15. So here's our breakdown on revenues, where we get them. So 65% is coming from those lease fees and property rentals. This property rental issue became a hot potato today in a conversation with the advisory committee. They thought that maybe we were giving priority to these property rentals by not increasing their rates at the same percentile as the other increases. These properties are along Orca Street. I made the mistake of calling that area a slum the other day with the FAA administrator who had relatives who lived over there. I'm sociology major, I should have known better, but in fact, it is very difficult for us to get people to rent those buildings. So we don't want to cause them to go away. So there's some discretion that is taking place. Did I offend anyone by making that comment about Orca Street? Are you familiar with? Okay, some. So our aircraft and our vehicle parking fees, 25%. We have some property on the airport that is totally underutilized. It's down on along Airport Heights, between the hospital, fire station, and Merrill Field Drive. All of that property in there, we're going to develop that into parking spaces for vehicles. We think we can squeeze 100 vehicles into that currently. There's a bunch of sand, gravel. So we're going to clean all of that out, pave it, and start using that to bring in some additional revenue. So this 8 cents a gallon is only giving us 10% of our revenue. So labor is 60%. Someone suggested from the advisory council that we look at ways to downsize. I've got 4 people working the maintenance. I've got 3 ladies because one position was cut out of our staffing a year ago. I don't think there's any fat in our staffing that would give any significant contribution to the shortfall, let alone, I'm not sure how we would operate safely. We're already there. And philosophically, I don't, when you're being squeezed by the economics, cutting people unless they're the dead wood. You know what dead wood is? People, they're drawing a paycheck and they're not doing anything. Well, yeah, get rid of those folks. When I was in the Marine Corps, we called those folks retired on active duty. They're getting a paycheck and just waiting for 20, and then they're going to bail out. But other than that, I don't think there's any savings in cutting labor. I think you need to find more innovative ways to generate revenue. And that's
Snow removal is pretty slow this year. When we've had snow, it takes a long time to get those areas cleaned out so we can get in and out with an airplane.
call me. My card is here. So I've asked, to that very subject, I have asked for one of my summer temps to be converted to a winter temp. Because if I have anyone that goes on emergency leave or has a heart, just forget I said that. If anyone goes on emergency leave or has a reason to not work, I have no depth. I go from 4 to 3. And to cover all 7 days of the week, they're all pulling 410s, but I have all 4 of them on 1 day of the week. So I'm trying to get a temp so that I have the depth. If I lose somebody, we all need to take some time off. And this fall, I got slammed with 2 or 3 emergency leaves. So I had no way to recover. And I don't have a commercial license, or I would drive. Maybe that's a solution. I got to get my CDL so I can drive I'm with you. Our utilities, and as I mentioned, I need to find out why my depreciation is an expense. I don't remember that. And intergovernmental charges, just let me say a word on this. This is a really hot button over at the airport, but the city provides for us an HR function, their legal function, so there's lots of staff functions that the city provides that I don't have the ability to do myself, right? And so this is a charge that I pay for that support from the city who has those staffs. Okay, so this is not a hot button for me, but you may have seen this IGC name drug through the street, and I think it's unfair. So that's what we pay to have the support in those administrative services from the city that we don't have internal to the Merrill Field staff. Fuel and supplies. Okay, so here's where we're going to start getting into the more emotional topics. So we get, categorically approximately 2 to 4 million. As long as we get 10 employments, we are guaranteed 1 million of airport improvement every year, but we have to come up with the matching funds. As you know, their FAA, AIP, Airport Improvement Program. Here's what it is. The FAA comes up with 93.25. It used to be 95%, as I mentioned. We have to come up with the 96.75. So here's our match, what it used to be. We did not borrow to pay for the matching funds from 89 to 17. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, just backing up on your last slide, is there anything in Dunleavy's proposed budget that affects the state contribution?
So the state eliminated their 2.5% several years ago before Dunleavy became government. So no, sir. However, in 2015, the FAA, for whatever reason, decided to start investing in infrastructure. But that required an ever-increasing matching fund requirement. So here's what they were, 11 to 14, $4 million. We had to come up with 104K. In 2012, another $4 million, 133K. So we were covering these matching funds out of that $4.5 million for the land exchange, for the frontage property for the Glen Highway. In 13, it was only $2 million, so it only cost us $65 in the matching. In 14, it goes to 1.6, so it's only $46K. And I don't mean to be flip about it, but $46K is chump change when you're looking at 1.6 million of airport improvement.
Where's all the airport improvement money being spent?
I will show you that in another slide, because I knew you were going to ask. Okay, here's where it starts to depart. In 2015, we got almost $7 million, but we had to come up with 200K. I don't mean to round up a lot, but I used to be a comptroller and I always round up to the nearest million. That's a hard crowd. Okay. Then it goes to 8 million. And we have to come up with 438K. 17 was 11 million invested in the airport to include dynamic compaction. And I'll show you what all of these bought in a slide coming up. Okay? Now, 2018, those dollars, actually it's a little bit less, more like 615K. Those dollars for that work have already been encumbered. They've already been spent, committed. Not all of the work has been completed. It will be finished in the summer coming up, but all of those dollars have been obligated. So if you wanted to say, Ralph, I don't want to pay any more matching funds, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm not that guy. Those decisions were made before I got here. The rounds are downrange for you artillery folks. Any artillery folks? Oh, okay. So here's what we bought in 11. Sweeper and a vacuum truck, and we started rehabbing Taxiway Quebec. Phase 2. There are multiple phases in these projects. And my predecessor put in a phase for this year and another phase to do something else in the next year. Because in our master plan, it gets approved by the FAA, but in this time frame, January, February, March, we find out how many of those things that they've approved will they actually fund. So in 12, we continue with Taxiway Quebec, the apron, phase 3, and some security improvements, and that was fencing and cameras. The FAA has recently decided that they may not want to invest anymore in cameras. However, there's someone who lives across from the approach end of runway 34 that is sneaking in the middle of the night and knocking out the rail lights. It's happened like once every couple of months. The FAA administrator was just here. Ralph, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, and they wanted to put a camera right on the power box. I thought perhaps electrifying the box to 2 bazillion volts with a warning, do not touch, or you'll die. Can't do that, so I'm just seeing if you're awake. But they want to put a camera on the windsock that is right adjacent to that box. It's the only one that's being tampered with is the one on the right as you're coming in on runway 34. We were just out there. The snow was 2 or 3 feet deep, and we did not see any footprints. So, and the snow had just fallen the week before, so it had to have been 2 weeks out. So that's what we did in 12. 13 was a snow blower and some runway lights. More on phase 4. And if you want to find out what each of these phases did that was different than the previous phase, my engineering guru is out of the country right now. But if you come on down, we'll show you everything we did in each of the phases. More security improvements, phase 3. City electric property acquisition, so that perhaps we can use that to generate revenue. There is on the 2019 another of the city electric pieces of property that I was just told early this week that the FAA, although approved that, is not going to fund it in 2019. More on Taxiway Quebec and the dynamic compaction. That Mr. Toad's wild ride on the airport on Merrill Drive, I believe, was in direct response to the dynamic compaction on the other side of the fence. That started to bubble up as they started beating down the garbage right across the street. Have you ever been out to the airport when they're doing the dynamic compaction? It's quite a thud. I had staff down at the university complaining they had a headache. But, okay. So, 17, these things, Taxiway Quebec Phase 6. Phase 7 and the rehab on Taxiway Gulf has not been completed, but these funds have already been committed. So if you said, Ralph, I don't want to have any more to do with this, it's too late for 2018. And I really think you would want to finish that rehab. So what about 19? You notice I put that matching funds permitted. Taxiway Charlie South, GA apron, lighting, and signage. Now, one of the things that's tied to this, in that lighting, is one of the reasons I think people are very upset with those runway lights is that they're on all the time. They cannot be triggered by the pilot. They're just on. And part of that is our electrical grid, the way it's laid out. That will all be fixed with this. So those lights will only be on at night, and or they'll be triggered by the tower, or they'll be triggered by the pilot. snow removal, road graders, dump trucks. My maintenance guy has a pickup that has holes in the floor. I have no funds to replace his truck. Again, I only offer that up to say that we're not driving Cadillacs when we should be driving Chevys. Have any Chevy drivers? No. Ford? Okay. I'm bound to get one of them pretty soon. Okay. Runway incursion mitigation program. You may or may not know that if I have a VPD, a vehicle pedestrian
Deviation.
thank you. I start getting nastygrams from the FAA, and when I get to a certain threshold, they will not give us any airport improvement funding. And I am required to respond to their letter, tell them what I have done, what I have said to the person, how I've handled it. And so I find myself talking to very wealthy individuals in their downtown offices with a velvet hammer, trying to remind them that they really shouldn't do that anymore. But what I tell the FAA is that I went down there like a bull in a tea shop, and I put the fear of God in them, and they will never do it again. And I put this in very tactful wording, and I send my letter back to the FAA, and they accept it or not. Normally, I'm, okay, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir. Recently, we had a gentleman who had a portable radio. There was an aircraft incident or accident, and he was monitoring the frequency when this accident involving an acquaintance took place. He heard that they closed down the runway, and he crossed 2 runways because they announced that the airport was closed. So the airport's closed. He's going to run over to this airplane, and someone reported him for a VPD. So I get this letter, and I say, I do not think this is an appropriate response to what took place. And the FAA came back and said, you're right, it's no longer a VPD. Okay? I just didn't want you to think that I just say yes or no sir all the time. It was inappropriate for them to give us a VPD for this incident. But it does have an impact on our AIP funding, and so we're trying to get people to be more sensitive to that. And some individuals just don't care.
You put it out in the newsletter.
So, excellent. Did you read my last newsletter?
I didn't.
It was
I usually read all of them. I don't know if it got thrown away.
It's still a good idea.
Well, yes. Good save. So please come to the office. There are copies of that newsletter. It took me hours to write that.
I look for them.
Okay. I've got some, and they got color pictures in them, of wings of gold that you could wear.
That sounds expensive.
It's just a jacket. All pilots need to have wings. Okay. Sandoval property was purchased, and there are funds for you English majors in 2019 to actually demolish that house. The house was already purchased.
Is that over in Orcam or
It's if you're going down 15th, it's in a complex off to the left before you get to the sign that says, what's that housing development? Fairview, thank you. So it's just before you get to the Fairview sign, over on the left. That is a very emotion-laden subject for the folks who live in Fairview. They would like to see us take the house down and convert it into a green zone for park use. Of course, one of our concerns is if you take out the house, it becomes a sledding hill, and thus it becomes a liability if anyone gets hurt going down that hill, which I understand is quite steep.
Why did you guys purchase the property?
Because it's underneath the traffic pattern. And it was put in the master plan that over the next 20 years, those properties that are underneath the traffic pattern would be purchased and demolished. It probably won't occur on my watch or anyone else's here. I do try to go out and meet with, I've been to 2 of the community councils so that they can put my picture up on the wall and throw darts at it. And you laugh, but some of them are really hostile. Before I'm even on the job, the chief of staff says, Ralph, you're not on the job yet, but we'd like you to go talk to the folks at Fairview. Okay, yes ma'am. These are not at the top of my list of things to do. Getting the airport as good as it can be for your use is all that matters to me in the 2019. I keep mentioning the 2018, that's already a done deal, but if the MAC says, we don't want you to spend any money on Sandoval, we don't want you to do anything with that electric building. Okay? But I don't think you want to cancel the improvements to the airport itself. Here's the road I talked about. It comes with 100% funding, although the FAA told me on Monday that we were in the top 10 for this no match funding. Am I past due? Did you say 7:30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got 30 minutes. He didn't think we would get all 15 million for the entire Merrill Field Drive project, but might get part of it. And so I would suggest to my engineering folks that we tackle that Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at that 90-degree turn first, and then over time, if we get more funds, then we can do additional sections. Now perhaps you would have a different perspective. I've not seen, it's not, well, I guess down there by the Air Force Memorial, you could make an argument that could go first. But again, this is only if they bring in, if they give it to us with no match required. Because on 15 million, the match would be almost 900 and some K. So it'd be almost $1 million just in matching funds if we were going to do that on our own. And I would not do that. I don't have 900K. That's a 15 million. So we have 9, including my 4 maintenance people. There's 9 of us. I took pictures today of us out on our one of our snow machines for the website. That was lies and deception. The truth of the matter is, I was asked to provide a picture of one of my mechanics that was selected as the Employee of the Year. Now, how am I going to get a picture of him and I can't tell him that he has been selected? So I invited all my mechanics for a one-on-one on the snow machine. Well, while we're all here, let's get the whole team out there. So we took pictures today. Now, you're all sworn to secrecy that you cannot reveal that Merrill Field has an employee that has been awarded the Employee of the Year. But it's been busting a gut for me to keep that as a secret. So these are all the things that any airport does as a part of their management. The last several slides, it talks about how Merrill works as a part of the municipality, and the most important takeaway is that I'm a political appointee. So I can be fired tomorrow. So if you come down to the office and it looks empty, you'll know that I am no longer appointed. And so I think this is a good breaking point to open it up for questions. Sir?
Couple. One is that we do have a property tax, but it looks, what I can see there is it probably goes in the general fund. Airplane owners.
Yes?
Okay.
Now,
That's
the fiscal officer is here if you wanted to dig deeper into that question.
Well,
I think
the
we're all-
question would be, does any of it come back to Merrill from that?
From that fund, no. So it pays for things like all property taxpayers. It pays for things like fire, police, etc. The MAC did send a proposal forward that suggested that maybe 50% of those tax revenues, which is about $500K, come back to the airport. But that, I think the conventional wisdom is that nobody else in the city is getting that deal. Now there is one source of revenue that I'm going to take up the cause. I might not be successful, and that is the airplane registration fees. I think I could articulate a reason for that to come back to the airport. That I think the tax revenues, we are getting services from the city for those tax revenues. Yes, sir?
Well, the other question is that I checked a few years ago on, just a couple years ago, on cameras, you know, I've never had a camera that I could look at my plane from. And I got a real negative response about any more cameras coming online, you know. But they are, you know, there was the tires that were slashed, all those, you know, and actually one of the pictures that they put in the paper of my plane was pretty close to where the person in the black coat was walking. I don't know who that person was, nobody does, but I just thought I'd ask about cameras in general. I mean, what you said about the FAA not really being interested in cameras anymore is, it's problematical in this day and age. You know, personally, I'd like to see some more cameras, but can't suggest how to pay for them right now.
Well, and I don't know why they did and then changed their mind, but a part of the 19 projects have to do with security. So I'm going to, especially now that the FAA regional administrator has told me he wants a camera on a windsock, I'm going to try to merge those security improvements for 19 with that request from the big guy to get more cameras. Whether they will, but yes, I agree.
I had some camera coverage when I was in Quebec parking, but of course we went to dynamic compaction there this summer, so I was forced to move over to Go, I'm sorry. And of course there's nothing there. And I know there are several people on the slope that have planes, and you know, they used to check the camera, so especially in the snow situation, and whether they could fly or whether they needed to, you know, have somebody come by and sweep their wings off and whatnot. So it certainly would be helpful to have one or two cameras over in the Gulf area.
So noted. And I'm trying to make it a part of the security upgrades for 19.
So then how does it actually work? So they give you funds, or there's funds earmarked, do you then propose?
So I have to
options
do
under the security protocol, then they have to review and
yes,
confirm that that's okay, and for whatever reason they soured on cameras.
yes.
And if you propose putting cameras in,
Now that I have a regional administrator in my court, I am hopeful that I can get the airport planning division here in Anchorage to reverse themselves. I will say, if you are in a zone that has camera coverage, you're welcome to come down and say, well, you know, Julie, our face of the airfield. We'll pull it up. Just tell me what time. Pull up that camera and we'll look at the footage. For example, a gentleman decided that he was not going to follow our protocols for going through the gate. You have to let the gate open and then shut before the next person goes through. This guy in his truck decided he was going to try to beat the gate, and he knocked the silly things off of its, you know. So how did we find out who did it? Got him on camera. And we called the property owner and said, hey, you know, who, license number, whatever, you know who this is? Well, yeah. So we called the gentleman in for a conversation. With a velvet hammer, of course.
Hopefully it paid for the damages.
So, that bill was $3,500 just for the gate itself. And so, yes, he's going to, I thought it was kind of funny. He walked in to say that he had left a note to inform us that he was the guilty party. But then he tried to argue that he should, what he did is, as the gate was closing, he was flashing his card, thinking that the sensor would pick up the fact that he did have a card and it should open up. Well, it didn't. That's not the way it's designed to work. It closes, and then you flash your card and it opens. But he was going to try to beat it through. So yes, he has a bill that his insurance company is going to have to cover. Now, if I could, in addition to those 6 cents, those are some of the things that we have not charged for, but we are now. I guess maybe in the goodness of our hearts to keep our customers happy, when things like that occurred, they did not get a bill. Not anymore. If you break it, you fix it. Sir?
This might sound like a stupid question, so forgive me, but what's the thought behind compacting the trash instead of hauling it out?
As I understand it, I'm not an engineer. There's only so much compaction that they can do to get to a point. I thought the number was 95%. In order to put on new pavement, they needed it compacted to a certain point, or it would just bubble up and be like that road out in front of the university. So it had to have some hauled away. But if you tried to haul away trash that had been building up since the 50s, you'd fill the dump, which is looking for, that's not the term, what do we call those folks? Well, but I thought internally they have another name.
Solid waste.
Thank you, sir. Solid waste. If we moved all of that stuff up to the current landfill that solid waste is managing, they're already looking for places to add. So that wasn't a viable solution. Plus what they wanted to charge me to take it, well, these folks that I won't hire anymore made a $3 million error by underestimating just how much trash needed to be hauled off and put into the landfill. So it's economics. And again, not an engineer, but they had to get it to a certain point in order to make it cost effective to then repave it so that it would stay flat and not buckle. There are no stupid questions.
Got none on mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going once? Going twice? Now in class, I would say, what movie is that from? Because I have every Disney movie ever made. Going once. Twice. And if the students get it, I give them extra credit. It's from Hercules. If you're a Disney movie fan. Well, thank you for having me here.